The rain came down hard that afternoon, as if the sky itself was trying to wash away the world's worries. The kind of rain that makes the streets glisten, the sidewalk slippery and the air thick with moisture. People hurried along, heads down, clutching their umbrellas and jackets close, trying to stay dry in the downpour. For most, it was just another dreary day, but for one man, it would turn out to be a moment that changed his life in a way he never expected. He had been walking down the street, trying to make his way home after a long day of work. His shoes were already soaked through, his coat clinging to his skin from the relentless rain. He wasn't in any particular rush, but the cold and wet were starting to wear on him. He pulled his collar up and kept his head low, not wanting to catch a cold. As he moved along the sidewalk, he noticed a figure ahead of him, struggling in the rain. At first, he didn't think much of it. People were always rushing around in the rain, trying to get out of it. But as he got closer, he saw that the person wasn't moving quickly at all. In fact, she was having trouble just staying on her feet. She was an older woman, frail and slow. Her thin frame hunched slightly against the wind. She held a small umbrella in one hand, but it wasn't much protection against the heavy rain that was falling in sheets. Her footsteps were unsteady, as if each step she took was a battle against the slick pavement beneath her. It wasn't uncommon to see people struggling on a rainy day. The streets often became dangerous, and even the most careful walkers could slip. But something about the woman caught his attention. She looked vulnerable, alone and at the mercy of the storm. He couldn't help but notice that she wasn't getting any help from the people around her. Everyone seemed too busy, too focused on their own problems to pay attention to the older woman in need. Without really thinking about it, he found himself walking towards her. The impulse was strong. Something about her situation just didn't sit right with him. It wasn't about being a hero or expecting anything in return. He just felt like it was the right thing to do. When he reached her, he didn't say much at first. He simply offered her his arm. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice soft but concerned. The woman looked up at him, surprised, as if she hadn't expected anyone to notice. Her tired eyes met his, and for a moment she didn't respond. Then she gave a small, grateful smile. "Thank you," she said, her voice shaky. "I'm all right. Just a little slow today." He could tell that she wasn't exactly all right, but he didn't push. "No problem," he said, offering a reassuring smile. "The rain can make things tricky." She nodded, clutching her umbrella tightly as they began walking together. It was a strange feeling, walking next to a complete stranger in the rain. But as they moved through the puddles, it felt natural, as if this simple act of kindness was just what the moment needed. He didn't know her, didn't know her story, but in that moment he could sense the relief in her. She was no longer fighting the rain and the wind alone. There was something comforting about having someone there, even for a few minutes, to help shoulder the weight of the world. They walked in silence for a while, the rhythmic sound of their footsteps on the wet pavement, blending with the soft patter of the rain. The woman was slower than he expected, each step seeming like a careful decision, her feet sliding slightly with every movement. He kept his pace slow, making sure she could keep up without too much strain. Eventually, they reached the corner of a small block. The woman paused, looking up at the building in front of them. It wasn't much, an older apartment complex with faded bricks and cracked windows, but it seemed like home to her. She smiled softly, and for a moment he saw a glimpse of something warm behind her tired eyes. "This is my stop," she said quietly. "I live right here." He nodded, glancing at the building. "I hope you get inside soon and stay dry," he said, his tone friendly but not overbearing. "You don't want to get sick in this weather." The woman chuckled lightly, her smile widening just a little. "I'm sure you're right. It's been a long day for both of us, hasn't it?" she said with a hint of humor in her voice. He laughed softly, realizing how true that was. The rain, the cold, the exhaustion from the day, it all seemed to weigh them down in the same way. Yet, in this brief encounter, there was a lightness. A small but significant connection had been made. It wasn't anything grand, but it mattered. "Well, I'll let you get inside," he said, giving a polite nod. "Take care." She nodded back, still holding the umbrella tightly, though she now had a firmer grip on her balance. "Thank you, young man. You don't know how much this helped." "You've been so kind," he smiled, giving a wave as he turned to continue his walk. "No problem. Have a good rest of your day." As he walked away, he felt a strange warmth in his chest. It wasn't a feeling of accomplishment or pride, but something deeper. He hadn't done anything extraordinary, hadn't gone out of his way to change her life, But in that moment, he had done something small and simple, something that mattered. And that in itself felt like enough. The rain continued to pour down as he walked on, but the weather no longer seemed as harsh. Maybe it was the act of helping her, or maybe it was just the reminder that even in the most mundane moments, a little kindness could make a difference. He didn't think much more about it as he continued down the street, the woman's grateful words still echoing in his mind. There was something about the moment that stayed with him, even though it had been so brief. He hadn't expected to feel anything special from helping a stranger, but now, as he walked home, he realized how much the simple act had meant to both of them. Later that night, as he sat in his apartment, he thought about the older woman again. He wondered if she was okay, if she had made it inside dry and safe. He wondered if she would be all right tomorrow, if the rain would come again. But he didn't expect anything to come from their brief encounter. After all, that was just the kind of thing you did for people, a moment of kindness that faded away once it was over. He wouldn't see her again, and that was fine. The world would move on. But what he didn't know was that this small, forgotten moment would be something far more significant than he could have ever imagined. The following morning, he woke up to a dull, gray light filtering through the blinds. The rain had stopped, but the air was still thick and damp. The sounds of the city outside were quieter than usual, muffled by the remnants of the storm. He stretched lazily, feeling the weight of the long day ahead. There was always something to do, always a task waiting to be completed, but today felt different. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman he had helped the day before. Her smile, her quiet gratitude, it stayed with him more than he expected. He shook off the lingering thoughts, reminding himself it was just a small act of kindness, nothing to dwell on. After all, people helped each other all the time. But as he went about his morning routine, the image of her kept creeping back into his mind. There was something about the way she had looked at him, the way she had thanked him, that made him feel like he had done more than just offer his arm. It felt like he had made a difference, even if only for a brief moment. By the time he left for work, the rain was long gone and the sun had started to break through the clouds. He walked down the street with his head held a little higher than usual, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. But there was something else in the air today, a sense of expectation, as though something was waiting just around the corner. He tried to shake it off, thinking he was just imagining things, but it stuck with him throughout the day. He couldn't focus on his work as much as he usually did. Every few minutes his mind would wander back to the woman. He found himself replaying the moment in his head. How she had looked at him with those tired eyes, how she had expressed her thanks in such a soft, vulnerable way. It felt like more than just a passing moment. He couldn't help but wonder if she was okay, if she had made it inside her apartment safely, if she was still all right after the rain had stopped. That afternoon, as he was grabbing a coffee at a small cafe, his phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. He debated whether or not to answer, but decided it couldn't hurt. "Hello?" he said, a little unsure of what to expect. "Good afternoon," came a calm, authoritative voice on the other end. "This is Mrs. Wilson. I hope you remember me." It took him a moment, but then the memory clicked. He had helped her the day before, the older woman in the rain. "Of course I remember you," he replied, a little surprised to hear from her. "How are you?" "I'm doing well, thank you," she said warmly. "I wanted to call and thank you again for your kindness yesterday. I don't think I properly expressed how much it meant to me." He smiled, a little embarrassed. "It was really no problem. I was just glad to help." "You're too modest," she responded gently. "I've lived in this neighborhood for many years and I've seen a lot of things. People walk by all the time, too busy to help. But you didn't hesitate. I could see the kindness in your eyes, and it's rare to see that these days." He didn't know how to respond to her praise. He had never thought much of his actions, just doing what felt right. But hearing her words made him realize that maybe it meant more to her than he had understood. "You're very kind to say that," he replied. "But really, it was just a small thing." "I don't think you realize just how much that small thing can mean," she said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "And I believe that you're someone who could do a lot of good in this world. More good than you might know." He was silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. He didn't consider himself someone special, not by any means. He had always just done his best, tried to help when he could, but that was the extent of it. He didn't see himself as someone who could change the world. Mrs. Wilson continued, "I've been watching you for a while now. I know you're involved in some local projects, and I believe you have the potential to do even more. What you did for me yesterday, it wasn't just a random act of kindness. It showed me that you care about the community, about the people around you, and I think that's something the world needs right now." He was taken aback. He didn't know how to process what she was saying. Watching him, he didn't realize anyone had been paying attention to his efforts. He had always kept to himself, doing what he thought was right without expecting anything in return. But this woman, this stranger, seemed to see something in him that he had never seen in himself. "I don't know what to say," he admitted, his voice quiet. "I'm just doing what I can. I never thought it would be something someone would notice." "That's the thing," she said, her voice steady and reassuring. "The best people don't do things for recognition. They do them because it's the right thing to do. And I think you could be a real asset to some of the projects I'm working on." His mind raced. Projects, he wasn't sure what she meant. "I'm not sure I follow. What kind of projects?" "I'm involved in some initiatives in the city," she explained. "Community development, education, outreach programs. There's so much work to be done, and I've been looking for someone like you, someone who has the heart for it. Someone who genuinely wants to make a difference." He sat up straighter in his chair, intrigued but still uncertain. "This was all happening so fast. I'm honored, but I don't know if I'm the right person for that kind of work. I don't have any experience in—" "You don't need experience," Mrs. Wilson interrupted kindly. "What you need is the will to help, the willingness to put others first. I've seen that in you already. And I think with the right guidance you could do more than just help. You could lead." He didn't know what to say to that. Lead? It felt overwhelming. But there was something in her voice, something confident and reassuring, that made him wonder if he might be capable of more than he thought. "I understand if you're not ready to make any decisions," she continued, "but I would like to meet with you in person. Perhaps we can talk more about how we can work together on some of these projects. I believe you have a lot to offer." He hesitated, then spoke. "I'd be happy to meet with you. I'd like to learn more." "Good," she said, sounding pleased. "I'll arrange a time for us to meet. I think you'll be glad you did." The conversation ended, and he sat there for a moment, his mind racing. What had just happened? He had helped a woman in the rain, and now she was offering him an opportunity to make a real difference in the world. It felt surreal. He had always wanted to do more, to help others in a bigger way, but he never knew where to start. Now it seemed like a door had opened, one he hadn't expected. But despite the excitement, a part of him felt unsure. Was he really the right person for this? Could he really make an impact in the way she believed he could? He didn't know the answers yet, but one thing was clear. This was a chance he couldn't ignore. As he prepared to leave for the day, he couldn't help but think back to the woman he had helped in the rain. Her words still echoed in his mind. "You have the potential to do more." Maybe she was right. Maybe this was the start of something bigger than he could have ever imagined. The following days felt like a blur. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, something big. He had been trying to focus on his usual routine, but his mind kept drifting back to Mrs. Wilson and the conversation they had shared. It felt surreal, almost like a dream. How could a simple act of kindness lead to something so important? He had helped an older woman in the rain, nothing more. Yet here he was, considering a new path, a new purpose, one he had never imagined. The call from Mrs. Wilson had left him with more questions than answers. She had spoken about projects, community outreach, and how he could be part of something bigger. But it was hard to wrap his mind around it all. He was just a regular guy who worked hard every day, trying to make ends meet. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't special. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that maybe that was the point. Maybe being ordinary was exactly what the world needed right now. Someone who understood the struggles, who didn't have all the answers but was willing to try. Still, doubt lingered in his mind. What if he wasn't cut out for something like this? What if he didn't have what it took to make a real difference? He wasn't sure he was ready for whatever Mrs. Wilson had in mind. But there was a part of him that couldn't let the opportunity slip away. What if this was his chance to finally do something that mattered? Days passed, and he found himself anxiously checking his phone, waiting for another call or a message from Mrs. Wilson. He tried to focus on work, to distract himself from the growing unease inside him. But the truth was, he couldn't stop thinking about what she had said. She believed in him. She saw potential in him. How could he let that go to waste? Then one afternoon he received a message. It was from Mrs. Wilson, asking if he could meet her at a cafe downtown. She suggested a time that worked for both of them, and just like that, it was set. He had mixed feelings about the meeting. Part of him was excited to finally understand more about the project she had mentioned, but another part was nervous that he wouldn't be able to live up to whatever expectations she had. The day of the meeting arrived, and he found himself standing outside the cafe, looking up at the sign. His palms were a little sweaty, his heart racing. This was it. This was the moment that could change everything. When he stepped inside, Mrs. Wilson was already sitting at a corner table, her back straight and her posture impeccable, as always. She looked up when she saw him enter and waved him over with a warm smile. Her presence was commanding, but there was something reassuring about the way she looked at him. It was as if she knew exactly what he was feeling even before he said a word. "Hello there," she said, her voice calm and inviting. "I'm glad you could make it." He smiled, feeling a little more at ease. "Of course. Thanks for inviting me." She motioned for him to sit, and as he did, she immediately began speaking, her words clear and purposeful. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I wanted to sit down with you today to explain more about what I've been working on, and how I think you could play a role in it." He nodded, eager to learn more but still unsure of what to expect. Mrs. Wilson continued, "Over the years, I've been involved in several projects aimed at improving our community, specifically in areas like education, job training, and affordable housing. These are issues that have always been close to my heart. I've seen how people struggle, how hard it is to make a living, to raise a family, to get ahead in a world that feels stacked against you. But I've also seen how small acts of kindness and cooperation can change lives, and that's where you come in." He blinked, trying to take in her words. "Me, I don't know what I can offer. I'm not a leader or someone with special skills." She smiled kindly. "That's exactly why I think you're perfect for this. You're not some polished professional. You're someone who understands what it's like to face challenges, someone who knows that life isn't always easy. People need to see that there are others who understand them, who have walked similar paths. You don't need to be a leader in the traditional sense. You just need to care, to listen, and to be willing to do the work." Her words struck a chord deep inside him. He had always felt like an outsider in the professional world, never quite fitting in with the people who seemed to have all the answers. He had often wondered if he had the skills to make a real difference, if he could lead others. But hearing her speak, it was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Maybe he didn't need to have all the answers. Maybe all he needed to do was show up, be present, and do his best. Mrs. Wilson went on, outlining some of the specific initiatives she was working on. One was a mentorship program for young people in the community, teaching them life skills, helping them prepare for careers, and giving them the guidance they needed to break out of cycles of poverty. Another was a job placement program, designed to help people find stable work and support their families. These were projects that could change lives, projects that could give people the chance to build better futures for themselves. She spoke with such passion and clarity that he couldn't help but be drawn in. The idea of helping others, of making a tangible difference, was something he had always dreamed of but never knew how to achieve. And now, here was this woman, who had spent her life working toward these goals, offering him the chance to be part of it. "I believe you have something special to offer," she said, her gaze steady and unwavering. "I know it's a big step, and I know you're probably wondering if you're ready for it, but sometimes the best opportunities come when we least expect them. This could be your chance to not just change your life, but the lives of others as well." He was silent for a moment, taking it all in. It was overwhelming, but it felt right. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the verge of something important. "I don't know where to start," he said honestly. "I've never done anything like this before." She chuckled softly. "That's the beauty of it. You don't have to have all the answers. I'll be here to guide you every step of the way. All you need is the willingness to learn, to listen, and to act when the time comes." He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. "Okay, I'm in. I'll help. I want to do this." Mrs. Wilson smiled widely, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "I knew you would. I'm glad to have you on board." The rest of the meeting went smoothly as they discussed the details of the projects and what his role might look like. She didn't sugarcoat anything. She was honest about the challenges they would face, but she also made it clear that the work was meaningful and rewarding. By the time the meeting ended, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced before. He had taken the first step toward something bigger than himself, something that mattered. And though he didn't know exactly where this path would lead, he knew one thing for sure. He was ready to give it everything he had. As he walked out of the cafe, he looked up at the sky. The clouds had cleared and the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm golden light over the city. It felt like a new beginning, a fresh start. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time he wasn't afraid. He was ready. The first few weeks working with Mrs. Wilson and the community projects felt like a whirlwind. Every day was filled with new experiences, new people, and challenges that stretched him in ways he hadn't anticipated. But with every challenge came a lesson, and with every lesson came growth. He found himself learning quickly, absorbing information about social programs, education initiatives, and how to build connections with people from all walks of life. The mentorship program was the first project he was involved in, and it was unlike anything he had ever done before. It was a chance to guide young people, to give them the support and tools they needed to make better choices for their futures. The more he got involved, the more he realized how much potential these kids had. Potential that was often hidden beneath layers of circumstance and limited opportunity. He was assigned a group of teenagers, many of whom came from tough backgrounds. They had experienced things he couldn't even imagine: loss, hardship, struggles that no one should have to face at such a young age. He often wondered what their lives would have been like if they had grown up with more support, more guidance, more opportunities. But he also knew that they had a chance to change things. They had the power to rewrite their stories, and he wanted to help them do that. At first, the kids were hesitant. They didn't trust easily, and who could blame them? Life had given them plenty of reasons not to believe in people. But as the weeks passed, he started to see cracks in the walls they had built around themselves. They began to open up, to share their dreams, their fears, and their frustrations. And slowly he started to feel like he was making a difference, even if it was just a small one. One afternoon he sat down with one of the teenagers, a girl named Kayla, who had been particularly quiet. She had kept to herself during most of the sessions, reluctant to participate in the group discussions. But today she seemed different, more relaxed, more willing to talk. "How's everything going, Kayla?" he asked, trying to start a conversation. She shrugged, looking down at the table. "I don't know. It's just hard, you know?" He nodded, understanding more than she knew. "Yeah, I get that. Things can feel tough sometimes. But you're not alone. You've got a lot of people here who want to help." Kayla looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and skepticism. "You don't get it. People always say they want to help, but it never really changes anything." He could see the hurt in her eyes, and it stung. He had heard that sentiment from so many others. People who had been let down by the system, by society, by the people who were supposed to care. But he wasn't going to let her words discourage him. He leaned in slightly, his voice gentle but firm. "I get it more than you think, but I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. We can work together to figure out what you want, what you need, and maybe it won't change everything overnight, but it can change something, little by little." Kayla didn't respond right away, but he could see the wheels turning in her head. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next few weeks were a blur of group activities, one-on-one sessions, and discussions about goals and dreams. He helped them set small, achievable objectives, things they could work on right now in the present to create a better future for themselves. It wasn't easy, but the more he worked with them, the more he believed in their potential. And then came the job placement program. This was where he truly began to understand the struggles people faced when it came to finding work. It wasn't just about sending out resumes and waiting for callbacks. For many, the process was a constant battle, fighting against a system that didn't seem to care, competing for limited opportunities, and often facing discrimination or bias. He saw it firsthand when he helped people with their job applications, when he coached them for interviews, and when he heard their stories of rejection and frustration. One woman in particular stood out to him. Her name was Linda, and she was in her 40s. She had worked in a factory for most of her life, but had been laid off when the plant closed down. Now she was struggling to find another job. She had experience, but the job market had changed, and she didn't know how to adapt. He spent time with Linda, working on her resume, giving her tips for interviews, and helping her build the confidence she needed to step back into the workforce. He could see the doubt in her eyes, doubt that she could still compete in a world that seemed to move faster than she could keep up. But he believed in her, and little by little he helped her believe in herself. After several weeks of job applications and interviews, Linda finally got a call from a company that was interested in her skills. She was ecstatic but also nervous. Could she really do it? He reassured her that she had everything it took to succeed. And when she finally landed the job, she came to him with tears in her eyes, thanking him for believing in her when she couldn't believe in herself. It was moments like that that kept him going. It wasn't about the big, flashy successes. It was about the quiet victories, the small moments of change, of growth, of people finding hope when they had almost lost it. But even with the progress, there were still challenges. Not everyone was ready to change. Some people were so deeply entrenched in their circumstances that it was hard to get through to them. He had sessions with people who were angry, who felt betrayed by the world, who didn't trust anyone, not even him. It was hard not to take it personally, especially when he knew that they had a right to be angry. They had been let down by so many people, and now here he was asking them to trust him. But he didn't give up. He kept showing up day after day, trying to make a difference in whatever small way he could. And slowly, bit by bit, he began to see the walls come down. The anger softened. The distrust faded. People started to believe in him, and in themselves again. One evening, as he was leaving a meeting with a few of the participants, Mrs. Wilson called him. Her voice was filled with excitement. "I just got off the phone with a few people," she said. "There's an opportunity for us to expand the program, to reach more people in need. This could be huge, and I want you to be a part of it." He could hardly believe it. The work he had been doing, helping a few people one small step at a time, was about to grow into something much bigger. The impact was going to ripple out to more communities, more families, more lives. Mrs. Wilson continued, "I've seen the way you connect with people, the way you don't give up on them. You've been doing incredible work. I want you to help lead the expansion. We need someone who's real, who understands the struggles people face." The words felt surreal. He had started this journey unsure of himself, unsure if he was even the right person for the job. But now here he was, being asked to help lead something bigger than he could have imagined. He took a deep breath, feeling both overwhelmed and humbled. "I'm in," he said, his voice steady despite the excitement bubbling inside him. As the call ended, he leaned back in his chair, staring out the window at the city below. It was a moment of realization. This was what he had been waiting for, the chance to make a real difference. And he was ready. Ready to take the next step, ready to help even more people, and ready to give everything he had to this cause. The road ahead would be tough, and he knew there would be more challenges, more obstacles, more moments of doubt, but he was no longer the man he was before. He was someone who had seen the power of kindness, the power of believing in others, and the power of never giving up, and that made all the difference. As the months passed, the program began to grow, expanding. Beyond what anyone had anticipated, the mentorship and job placement initiatives were thriving, with more and more people from the community signing up for help. What had started as a small effort to give back had now become a full-fledged movement, reaching far more people than he ever thought possible. And through it all, he continued to feel a deep sense of fulfillment, a sense that he was exactly where he needed to be. The people he worked with had become like family to him. He saw their struggles, their triumphs, their doubts, and their victories. Each person he helped, each story, each life, became a part of his own story. He no longer just went to work. He lived it. The work was exhausting, yes, but it was also rewarding in ways he could never have imagined. There were difficult days, of course. Days when he questioned his ability to keep going, when it seemed like the challenges were too big to overcome. But those moments were far outnumbered by the days when he saw the impact of his efforts. When he saw someone land their first job after months of searching. When he saw a young person gain confidence, start dreaming bigger, and believe in themselves for the first time. Those moments made every challenge worth it. One of the most meaningful moments came one afternoon when he was working with a young man named Tyler. Tyler had been in and out of trouble for most of his life, a product of a system that had failed him at every turn. He had dropped out of school, had run-ins with the law, and had struggled to find any direction in life. But there was something different about him. Despite his past, Tyler had a spark. He wasn't a lost cause, he just needed someone to believe in him. For weeks, they worked together. They talked about his goals, his dreams, his struggles, and his fears. There were days when Tyler seemed to lose hope, when it felt like nothing was going to change. But there were also days when he showed up early, ready to work, ready to take on whatever challenge lay ahead. It wasn't easy, but with each small step forward, Tyler grew stronger. He began to see that the future wasn't something that just happened to him. It was something he could shape, something he could control. One afternoon, Tyler came into the office, a huge grin on his face. He had just received a job offer at a local auto repair shop, a position that would give him not only a steady income, but also a chance to learn and grow. "I got it," he exclaimed, holding up the job offer letter like it was a trophy. For a moment, he just stood there, smiling back at Tyler. "I knew you could do it," he said, his voice full of pride. Tyler's grin grew wider. "I didn't think I could," he admitted. "But you kept telling me I could. You didn't give up on me." It was in that moment that he realized just how much this work had meant, not just to Tyler, but to him. He had become a part of these people's lives, and they had become a part of his. They had helped him grow just as much as he had helped them. It wasn't just about giving back. It was about the connections, the shared experiences, the way that helping others made you better, too. Tyler wasn't the only success story. There were countless others, people who had been struggling, lost, or uncertain about their future, now finding their way one step at a time. And as the program continued to grow, he found himself taking on more responsibility, more leadership. Mrs. Wilson, who had been his mentor from the beginning, began to step back, allowing him to take the reins of certain aspects of the initiative. She had always believed in him, and now it seemed she was ready to hand over more of the vision to him. "I'm proud of everything you've accomplished," she told him one day after a meeting. "This program has become something incredible because of you. But now it's time for you to step up even more. You're ready to take on more. You're ready to lead." Her words felt heavy with meaning, but also full of hope. He had never imagined that he would be in this position, leading a movement that was changing lives. There were days when it felt like he had so much to do, so many people to help, and so little time. But there was also a growing sense of purpose, a sense that he was exactly where he was meant to be. As he took on more leadership, he worked closely with the other staff members, organizing events, building partnerships with local businesses, and finding ways to get even more people involved in the program. They held workshops, job fairs, and outreach events, bringing the community together and helping people find the resources they needed to succeed. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were always obstacles, funding issues, bureaucratic red tape, resistance from people who didn't understand the importance of the work they were doing. Some days it felt like they were taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But through it all, he stayed focused. He had seen what this program could do, and he was determined to keep it going, no matter the challenges. One of the biggest hurdles came when they tried to expand the program into new neighborhoods, areas that were more underserved and had a higher population of people who had fallen through the cracks. There was resistance from some of the local leaders, who didn't see the value in the initiative or didn't think it would work in their communities. But he refused to back down. He knew that the people in these neighborhoods deserved the same opportunities as anyone else, and he wasn't going to let anyone stand in the way of that. He spent weeks meeting with community leaders, explaining the vision of the program, showing them the success stories, and convincing them that it could make a real difference. It wasn't easy, and there were times when he thought they might never get the approval they needed. But just when he was about to give up, he got a call from one of the leaders who had been the most skeptical. "We're on board," the voice on the other end of the line said. "We've seen what you're doing in other areas, and we want to be a part of it. Let's make it happen." The relief that washed over him in that moment was overwhelming. He had done it. The program was expanding, and it was going to help even more people. He had fought for this, believed in it, and now it was happening. As the years went by, the program continued to grow. He watched as people's lives were transformed. People who had been struggling, people who had been lost, now finding their way, gaining confidence, and creating better futures for themselves and their families. It wasn't always easy and it wasn't always pretty, but it was real, and it mattered. One evening, as he sat in his office looking out the window at the city below, he thought about how far he had come. He thought about that rainy day when he had helped the older woman, not knowing that it would lead him here to this moment. He thought about the people whose lives had touched his, whose struggles had become his own, whose successes had become his greatest rewards. He wasn't the same person he had been before. The journey had changed him. It had taught him the value of perseverance, of kindness, and of believing in others, even when they didn't believe in themselves. And as he looked ahead, he knew there was still so much more to do, so many more lives to touch. But for the first time he felt ready to face whatever came next, ready to keep pushing forward, and ready to make an even bigger difference. It had all started with one simple act of kindness, and now here he was, leading a movement that was changing the world, one life at a time. Months passed, and the community initiative continued to expand and evolve. With each new challenge that arose, he found himself growing more confident in his ability to handle whatever came his way. What had once seemed like an overwhelming task was now something he approached with purpose and clarity. Every success, every breakthrough felt like a small victory, not just for the people he was helping, but for him as well. The work was still demanding, of course. There were always meetings to attend, plans to be made, and resources to secure. But he had learned to manage it all, to prioritize and delegate, and most importantly, to lean on the incredible team of people who had become his support system. They had all become a family in a way, each person driven by the same mission to make a difference in their community. One of the most rewarding aspects of the job was seeing how much the program had transformed, not just the lives of the people they were helping, but also the lives of the volunteers and staff who worked alongside him. Every day they gave so much of themselves, not for fame or recognition, but because they believed in the cause. They were part of something bigger than themselves, and that was enough to keep them going through the tough times. One day, as he was sitting in his office, reviewing some of the success stories that had come through the program, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment, unsure if it was a call that he wanted to take. But then, thinking it might be something important, he answered. "Hello, good afternoon," said the voice on the other end. "This is Mrs. Wilson. I wanted to check in and see how everything is going. I've been hearing such wonderful things about the program." He smiled as he recognized her voice. It had been a while since they last spoke, but he had always appreciated her guidance and mentorship. "Things are going really well," he said. "The program is growing and we're reaching even more people. It's been incredible to see how much it's making a difference." "That's fantastic to hear," she said. "I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished. But I wanted to talk to you about something. There's an opportunity for you to take the program to an even bigger level. I've been in talks with some larger organizations, and they're interested in partnering with us to expand the reach of the program. But they'll need someone with your vision, someone who understands the heart of what we're doing." His heart skipped a beat. The possibility of expanding the program to an even larger scale was both thrilling and intimidating. They had already made such an impact, but the thought of reaching even more communities, of potentially helping thousands more people, was both exhilarating and overwhelming. "That sounds amazing," he said, trying to hide the excitement in his voice. "What would that look like?" Mrs. Wilson explained that the partnership would involve securing more funding, gaining access to additional resources, and working with influential organizations that could amplify the program's impact. It would mean more exposure, more opportunities, and most importantly, more people who could benefit from everything they had built so far. "It's a big step," Mrs. Wilson said, "but I believe you're ready for it. I've seen how far you've come, and I have no doubt you'll be able to handle this." He paused, taking in everything she had said. It was a huge opportunity, and it felt like the next logical step in the program's growth. But there was a part of him that still felt a little unsure. Could they really manage such a large expansion? Could he keep the essence of the program intact while scaling it up? But then he remembered why he had started this journey in the first place. It wasn't about the recognition, the accolades, or the fame. It was about making a real difference. It was about helping people who were struggling, giving them the tools and resources they needed to create a better life for themselves. And if this partnership would allow them to do that on a larger scale, then he couldn't let fear hold him back. "I'm ready," he said, his voice steady. "Let's do it." Excellent, Mrs. Wilson said, clearly pleased. I'll get the ball rolling on my end and we can start planning how we'll make this happen. It's going to be a lot of work, but I know you're more than capable. As the conversation ended, he sat back in his chair, a sense of both excitement and responsibility settling over him. This was it. The next chapter. The chance to take everything they had worked so hard to build and multiply its impact. But he also knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, obstacles, and challenges along the way. He would need to stay focused, stay grounded, and ensure that the core values of the program remained intact. No matter how big it grew, the following weeks were filled with meetings, phone calls, and brainstorming sessions. He worked closely with Mrs. Wilson and the other leaders in the community to plan out the expansion, ensuring that they had everything they needed to succeed. They worked on securing funding, reaching out to potential partners, and mapping out how the program would operate in new locations. It was a lot to manage, but he felt more confident with each passing day. He knew they had a strong foundation, and now it was time to build on it. One of the most challenging aspects of the expansion was ensuring that the staff and volunteers were ready to handle the increased demand. The program had already grown significantly, but with this new partnership, they would need even more people, more mentors, more job coaches, more community organizers to keep up with the influx of participants. It was a daunting task, but he knew that they had the right people in place. They just needed more hands to help carry the load. He spent a lot of time recruiting new volunteers, talking to local organizations, and finding people who shared the same passion for helping others. It wasn't always easy to find the right people, but he knew that the success of the program depended on having a strong, dedicated team behind it. And with each new person who signed on to help, he felt more confident that they could pull this off. The expansion also required more outreach to the community. They needed to let people know about the new resources and opportunities that were available to them. He worked with local businesses, schools, and community centers to spread the word, ensuring that no one who needed help would be left behind. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it when he saw the impact it had on the people they were helping. Finally, after months of preparation, the expansion was ready to launch. The new partnerships were in place, the funding had been secured, and the program was set to reach more people than ever before. As the launch day approached, he felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. This was the culmination of everything they had worked for, but it was also just the beginning of a new chapter. On the day of the launch, he stood at the front of a crowded room, surrounded by people who had supported him and the program from the very start. There were staff members, volunteers, community leaders, and even some of the people who had benefited from the program in the past, now giving back by helping others. The energy in the room was electric, and he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what they had achieved. "Today marks the beginning of something incredible," he said, his voice full of emotion. "This program started with just a few people, a few ideas, and a whole lot of hope. And now, because of all of you, we're able to reach so many more people, to offer the support and resources that can help them build better futures. We're not just changing lives, we're changing communities. And this is just the start." As he spoke, he could see the faces in the crowd, faces full of hope, full of potential. He knew that this was what it was all about. The program wasn't just about the work he did. It was about the people it helped, the lives it touched. And today he felt prouder than ever to be a part of it. The expansion was a success, and as they moved forward, he knew there would be more challenges to face, more obstacles to overcome. But he was no longer the unsure man who had started this journey. He was someone who had learned, who had grown, and who had discovered just how much one person's actions could change the world. And no matter what came next, he was ready to face it head on, knowing that with the right people by his side, anything was possible.